happened with you the day you were arrested?
So that Saturday, August 29th, I was out filming in my professional capacity as an independent journalist. I was filming protesters that were practicing civil disobedience in Civic Park across from the Kenosha County courthouse. At that time, everybody was relatively peaceful. There was a young lady that was wielding katana swords who was making a bit of a disturbance and banging the swords on a light post. So I started filming that as well. Shortly after, multiple blacked out vehicles had arrived, taking her into custody, rushing the field, telling all of protesters to disperse. Anybody that kind of mouthed off a little bit to law enforcement was taken into custody. I was standing on top of a barricade filming the entire thing, staying out of law enforcement's way. Shortly thereafter, everything was relatively quiet. So approximately 8:53 p.m., I had shut my live stream off, met up with the rest of mainstream media and all of that, kind of same as I do every single night, kind of comparing notes, what happened, this and that, packed up everything inside of my bag, and then proceeded to walk towards the lake, which is my route home. And within a few moments, I was stopped by another blacked out, unmarked vehicle. I stepped up onto the grass, immediately identified myself as press, as an independent journalist. The law enforcement agent, who I couldn't tell you what department he's with, what his name is, anything like that, pretty heightened level in his voice, the escalation of him, had stopped me, started asking questions. Again, I kept insisting that I am press. I do own a legitimate company that is registered with the state of Wisconsin. I've been out here every single night covering all of the events here in Kenosha. I was accused of being Antifa. I was accused of potentially carrying bombs inside of my press bag, which is filled with camera gear, snacks, and medical equipment in case I get hurt. They proceeded to search me. They searched my bag. I asked them not to. I told them that I wasn't giving them consent to confiscate any of my camera gear or my footage, like all of us press do, insisting that, they were stating that I was violating curfew. I insisted that press was not subject to those curfew ordinances that we're seeing all over the country, that I do have legitimate credentials. I even have second credentials from a minister who also asked me to come out here and film everything and kind of report back and all that. None of that seemed to matter. There were multiple other law enforcement units that were kind of passing by and stopping and talking with those two agents. The one agent that had most of the interaction with me was a little bit terrifying because of the escalation in his voice. It wasn't a very professional manner. The other gentleman that was there was amazing, very calm, very rational. There were other people, protesters as well, that were kind of walking by. There was some individuals that were driving past that were of an opposing side. White individuals that were not stopped by any of the law enforcement that was driving past. So it was like they were picking and choosing who to stop. At some point, I did get taken into custody. I had asked if I could open my bag. They had asked if I had credentials. I had asked to open my bag to show more identification. They told me yes. I dropped my bag on the ground and went to unzip one of the compartments, at which point that individual had put his hand on his gun. I stopped what I was doing and put my hands up and said, "You just asked me to grab some credentials." It was a little bit terrifying. I do wear a body cam. You've seen that. I repeatedly kept trying to hit record on my body cam as well. Every time I went to touch the camera to start recording, I was told to keep my hands down at my side, that they didn't know what I was reaching for. I clearly stated, "You obviously see this as a camera. I asked repeatedly to record the stop. I was denied from recording. I did state that I do have a right to record. They told me I didn't. And then at some point, I was placed under arrest. They told me to put my hands behind my back. I asked if I was being placed under arrest and not detained anymore. They said I was under arrest. I asked for what? They said for a curfew violation. I again repeated that I was an independent journalist and was not subject to curfew, that I was out here in a professional capacity. They've seen me every single night. And then I was handed over into the custody of Kenosha Police Department. A marked squad car came to pick me up. I was put in the back of the squad car. Again, multiple unmarked vehicles came up. Individuals, not wearing any type of police identification were stepping out talking to law enforcement. And accompanied with that Kenosha Police Department officer was a Waukesha sheriff. Once it was just kind of the three of us in the vehicle and I was being transported over to the jail, I had asked every officer I had asked to identify their name and badge number. I was told they didn't have to give that. While in the vehicle, when it was just the three of us, I asked the KPD officer, who was very, very cordial, very polite, very respectful, answered any questions other than identifying. Again, told me he didn't have to. I addressed the Waukesha sheriff and I said, "Sir, can you identify who you are, your name and badge number?" At no time did he speak. I was told by the KPD officer that the gentleman to his right did not exist and he was not here. And that they didn't have to identify, and their reason being was that they were getting death threats, and they didn't have to identify themselves. Every officer that I've encountered has been having blacked out name badges, and you can't really see their badges. Most people are not wearing badges of any kind, any type of markings that they are even law enforcement. Once I got into the jail, I was handcuffed to a bar in the garage while waiting to get my temperature taken. Once my temperature was taken, I was then brought into the jail. The sheriffs that were in the jail, by far, they were super, super nice, very respectful. I proceeded to tell them that I was also a journalist, that I was being arrested illegally. A couple of them have watched my streams. They knew who I was. Found it to be a little odd that I was being arrested for curfew as a journalist. I was booked. I was held down in the holding cell, and I was there for approximately 17 hours. It was probably 6 or 7 hours in before I even got my first phone call.
Wow, that must have been a very long night.
Definitely was. Not a lot of sleep. And then, while I was in there, I had an opportunity to interview a lot of other protesters. And then when I made it upstairs finally, there was another group of protesters that I was able to meet and got a chance to interview all of them. So, but every single one of them was African American. Every single one of them was arrested on a curfew violation, regardless of what they were doing. One individual wasn't even a protester. He was actually on his way to his brother from work. Was stopped by local KPD, explained that he just got a phone call from his brother to pick him up. She allowed him to proceed on. He was stopped a second time, and his story, which I'll interview him, his story is that that officer later then joined all of those other officers and pretended to not ever have contact with him.
We were together one night when the police and the feds and the National Guard stormed that area by the courthouse and basically told everyone that the press is not exempt, and there was this back and forth argument whether press is exempt, and later on, the ordinance actually does exempt the press, maybe not in Kenosha, but the ordinance for the curfew itself. Where do you think went wrong that they were not tolerant to press anymore, that they don't want them to be on the streets?
Well, I think in my opinion, I think from what we're seeing is, from what I'm noticing on the ground, having my boots on the ground and being in the middle of the protests, being in the middle of the riots, being in the middle of watching my city being burned down, what I am noticing and what I'm trying to report and show on this camera is that it is protesters, regardless of the color or race that you are. that are the ones that are being arrested. Anybody that has an anti-police or anti-police brutality kind of stance towards the entire thing, anybody that is speaking out loud for George Floyd or Jacob Blake or any of the other systemic racism that's going on, those are the individuals that are getting arrested. And I think when it comes to the independent journalists especially, and I know you were there with me too and you got threatened, but when it comes to the independent journalists especially, we're in the mix with all of these people and we're filming what's happening. In my opinion, I don't think certain individuals want that stuff on film. They don't want that stuff out there. And with watching the opposing side's viewpoints, these guys that are carrying flags and backing the blue, when they're able to just drive by and not even get stopped, and that's stuff that I'm also filming, which is showing a discrimination, I think that becomes a problem. So, but I also do understand and appreciate from law enforcement side with some of the stuff that's happening in Seattle and Minneapolis and Portland, where you do have individuals that are posing to be press or medics or whatnot that are attacking law enforcement. So I do understand. But with the amount of times that I've been stopped by everything from local police department to U.S. Marshals, it's just...
Does that give them excuse?
No, we are protected by, First Amendment rights, and I think everybody has a right to have their voice heard. That's why I'm here,
How did you, how did the whole lawsuit come into being? And
Are you talking about our lawsuit?
yes.
I don't know if he knows how to answer that question.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I'm not...
Yeah.
What are you hoping though to achieve from the lawsuit?
Well, from the federal lawsuit that was filed, and then with my court case as well, I'm hoping that we can still maintain our First Amendment rights, as well as all of the rights that we have as American citizens. And I'm hoping that it's an example of kind of a proper way of going about making sure your voices are heard and using the system that we have in place that we should be able to trust and rely on in order to protect those rights. That's what I'm hoping.
So just off the record right now, just to clarify something. He's not a named plaintiff.
Yeah, give me a minute, guys.
No. You're not a named plaintiff.
Not in the federal thing.
Right, not
But in the city one, yes.
well, he's a defendant because he's given, as far as I'm concerned, illegal curfew violations. And we're going to fight that case. He is a witness in the federal lawsuit. Okay. So, I mean, he could have been a plaintiff, but it just happens to be that we have other people. But
Okay.
He did fill out an affidavit.
Okay.
So I just wanted to...
The attorney's
wanted to
clarifying
explain to me
some
now,
stuff with the reporter between the federal
between you.
thing and in my case.
Yes. يمكن نرجع للسؤال بعدين بس تغير شوي ولا منيح ولا شو رأيك؟
You want to change the background a little?
Yeah, just a little bit. Yeah.
All right, I'm going to turn this around so you guys can see.
Just my hair.
So this is my attorney.
I know. You know, I cut I have my own hair, my kids' hair.
You have straight hair. That's so much easier. Curly hair.
I can't. I think it's easier.
Well, I can't do
You
it.
can't. Any mistake. Sure.
All right. So, good. I'm really excited to be here.
That's what you're my mom. Okay.
Oh, yeah. It's much more pleasant right here.
Yes.
I mean, I'm glad it's hot. I'm actually glad because I like summer weather. I'm mourning the fact that September already.
See, and I'm trying to get darker.
I'm okay with summer. I'm not okay with humid.
No, I don't like humidity.
Yes.
I prefer dry heat, but
Humidity,
it's like, you know, it's going to be winter here and it's going to be awful.
Oh. It's been awful in DC too.
Yeah, I know DC's
Global
had some
warming.
bad winters, but it's true. It has been horrible there, but you know, it's really good for now because you can't go places in summer.
Yeah.
Like, I will not set foot in a restaurant or a bar inside. You know, there's no way.
We were forced to because I mean we needed to eat at some point.
See, I only eat restaurants outdoors.
Yeah, makes sense.
No, Nicole. Katie's doing her own thing.
Makes a lot of sense.
We're not together as any type of, journalist partners, anything like that. She's got her own thing. I got my own thing, so I do my own thing.
Is your problem because the ground's uneven?
You can fix it from here.
Oh, okay. Because I mean, there's all the
I did it.
concrete down there in the shade too.
I
if
did
you
it.
wanted.
Should do it for Alia. Maybe fix it.
That better? Sure. Whatever works for you.
And I'm gonna start with the
Whatever you want. It's fine.
okay. Dumbest question. Tell me about the lawsuit. What is it exactly? Who's filing what?
So I'm part of a group of lawyers that discussed the situation in Kenosha because it was clear that people's First Amendment rights were being violated here. The first couple of days, they were being violated through violent activity of the police department in shooting protesters with rubber bullets, tear gas, pepper bombs, whatever was going on. It appeared to me siren because that's so loud. Right. I mean, you guys will have to edit this. So, right. All right. Do you want me to start over?
Yes, please.
You want me to start all from
Yes,
the beginning?
it's
Okay.
better than.
All right. So I'm part of a group of lawyers that is concerned about people protecting the rights of protesters. People's First Amendment rights have been violated in Kenosha. Now, initially, the police violated them in a violent manner by shooting tear gas, rubber bullets, pepper-filled bullets at protesters. But it very quickly was apparent on Wednesday of last week that the police changed their tactics on August 26th and started massively arresting people for curfew. And that's just a violation of people's constitutional rights. There's a First Amendment right to protest, and although a curfew can legally be issued in an emergency, it cannot be enforced unequally. They can't enforce it only against one group of people whose message they don't like, and not enforce it against a group of people whose message they do like. So it appears here that the police wanted to round up anti-police protesters, people who are protesting the death of Jacob Blake, of police misconduct, of police use of force and brutality. On the other hand, all of the police supporters are not being rounded up. This became very clear on Tuesday night, the night that Kyle Rittenhouse killed 2 people and terribly injured another individual. That at least some of the militia people were bragging that they were working with the police, that the police had told them. There's one fellow who's been seen on YouTube saying something to the effect that the police are going to push them on us and then we'll let you take care of them. And the police were giving water to those people, but they were acting violently towards the people who are protesting the Jacob Blake shooting and other acts of police violence like George Floyd, etc. So they changed their tactics after the shooting, and it became clear something has to be done because something like 30 to 40 people appear to have been rounded up every night. So it took us time to understand. We understood what was happening, and we decided we were going to file a lawsuit. So we actually started working on it last Friday, and we were able to get it into court on Monday.
It's a federal lawsuit?
It's a federal civil rights lawsuit. In other words, that it is a violation of the First Amendment to round up protesters. It is a violation to selectively enforce the law. That's not allowed under the First Amendment, and it's not the American way of life, and it should not be that way. A curfew ticket is kind of similar to a traffic ticket, right? You get pulled over, you're speeding, you could end up paying a fine of $100 or $200. What usually happens? Police officer writes you a ticket. That's not what's happening here. They're taking people into custody. They're taking them in unmarked vehicles. They're not letting them make phone calls. They're keeping them in the jail for what usually looks like about 15 to 20 hours while they book them. Nobody knows where their loved ones are. People are frantic. They don't know why people have been taken off the streets. It's just a blatant violation of their rights.
So about 150 people so far were arrested by police in violation of curfew.
Yeah, I have to take a look at the exact numbers. Some of those people ended up being charged with other things, but there are numbers of people that it's pure curfew. Sometimes the police claim they resisted arrest. I don't know that that's true. So that'll all have to be sorted out in the legal system.
How many people do you have in the lawsuit? And were you hoping to get more, or are you just going to depend on the number that you have?
We have 4 named plaintiffs in the lawsuit, but we've asked for certification as a class, meaning that it would represent not only the 4 named plaintiffs, 2 of them are from Milwaukee and 2 of them are from Kenosha, but it would also represent anybody else who is similarly situated.
We're just going to ask you to hold off for a second. Can you stop for 2 minutes? Thank you.
Thank you.
There we go. Your leaf blower's done now, guys.
Thank you.
It's very sweet. Thank you.
Okay.
What are you hoping to achieve from the lawsuit? And I know the government, or I'm expecting that the government is going to use civil unrest, the protests, the fires, as an excuse to round up all those people who violated the curfew, because they don't know, they could have been violent protesters, they would say.
Well, that assumption is ridiculous. Obviously, there were some people who engaged in violence during the first couple of days, but that has not at all been the situation during the curfew situation. And in fact, the only people who were violent on Tuesday, August 25th, were the militia members. Not one protester fired a gun, killed anybody, injured anybody, or committed any of those acts. Militia people, or at least one of them, Kyle Rittenhouse, did do those things. They came armed with very large weapons. There were also a lot of other gunshots that were fired. We don't know who fired those gunshots yet. That has to be investigated. But it's certainly rational to conclude that that was all on the militia side, because the protesters have been going to a lot of peaceful protests all over the place, and they have not been violent at all. It's important to note that the curfew has now ended. The city of Kenosha, or the county of Kenosha rather, said the state of emergency is over, and that at the present time they don't intend to start it back again. As far as the case of the lawsuit, that means we no longer have to go to court to get an emergency temporary restraining order. So as the lawyers, we have to discuss what our next step is, because what if they want to reinstate it? What about damages for the plaintiffs who were involved? What about all of these tickets that people were issued? And as far as I'm concerned, and there are a number of lawyers representing all these different people, these tickets are illegal. People were stopped illegally. There are also questions about whether they've complied with the law in the issuance of this order. You can't all of a sudden just say, oh, we have a curfew, or just declare martial law. One cannot do that. There are avenues that are supposed to be done properly. The law says that these things should be in writing, that they have to be posted by the city clerk, et cetera, et cetera. We have found no evidence that the order was ever written. We have asked for copies of the ordinance by open records. I asked for it just by contacting the county attorney's office on Monday. So far, at least as of me speaking with you right now, have not been given anything in writing. So that is another legal issue which is going to take some time, but we're certainly going to probe that.
What does that tell you about the state of the state right now, with everything that's going on, with the fact that the curfew was so tight that nobody was able to leave, and everybody who left or was rounded up. Journalists were threatened. Police were in unmarked, or agents were in unmarked cars. What does that tell you?
Well, I'm gravely concerned because people have a First Amendment right to express their views. It is just blatantly illegal to arrest a journalist for violating a curfew. Every curfew order that I've ever seen does exempt journalists. That is a chilling exercise of interfering with the freedom of the press. The freedom of the press is a sacrosanct principle in American society. So I'm deeply concerned about people being able to exercise their rights and the chilling effect it has, because people are afraid when they're going to go to jail. We're going to have to explore what happened here. Who were the police officers involved? Why were they in unmarked cars? Why are they hiding their identities? Why are they covering up their badges? That is a process that we're going to have to look into and fight, because it's not how things normally happen. I have seen other protesters and other protests and that not happen.
As a lawyer, one of the things that the agents told us is that if you have credible badges, credentials, you might be allowed to stay, but no one would, independent or social media, or as a lawyer, is that what makes a journalist that,
It seems to me that they haven't caught up with the current state of American society. But, just as we no longer have brick and mortar stores where we go get videotapes or CDs because everything is streaming, journalism has changed as well. And a lot of journalism is done by independent citizen reporters who are streaming. It's not uncommon. This is part of American society, and these independent journalists have no less of a right to be out and covering their subjects and doing that work than somebody who works, for example, with CNN or CBS News. The police aren't allowed to start making decisions about who they think is a real journalist and not. That is not appropriate under any set of circumstances.
Great, thank you very much. Can I have your card, or do you want to?
I don't have a card, but I can give you my name and
Yes.
contact information.
Perfect.
Sure.
Do you want to do that live, Deja, in case anyone needs to reach out to you that was a protester that might have been arrested?
I'm getting.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not that worried. They're all reaching out to everybody.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm fine.
We're just
Yeah.
gonna continue talking.
Right.
It's gonna take some
Okay.
footage of us.
Okay. Right,
But
you're
I'll
not
get
recording
your.
it.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, we're not recording.
Do you want me to end this?
You can.
That's up to you.
Well, I don't want to get anything that,
Yeah, we're.
That's off the record. Yeah.
Okay. Alright, guys. Well, there we go. There's my ugly face. So there you go. There you have it. There's all your answers to First Amendment and journalism. So that is my attorney. I'm hoping the volume was decent enough. I obviously don't have her mic'd up because she's mic'd up for the main interview that was given there. But yeah, so they did file a federal lawsuit that is being challenged on a constitutional level. They filed that, I believe, yesterday, so that is of public record, so you guys are more than welcome to go search that and pull that up and read what that's all about. I did an affidavit the other day, so I will have my documents all filed here shortly. But as you heard, a lot of people that were arrested, their First Amendment rights were being violated. My rights were being violated. So we're challenging that. And I think that's the appropriate way to do it. So this is the way I choose to fight. and we'll see what happens. So, but yeah, there you have it. So I wanted to get that on video for you guys, so you guys could actually hear from a lawyer on what exactly is going on. I will be out today. Curfew is lifted, folks, so please, return to normal. Go to your jobs, walk the lake, take the kids out to the park, okay? Enjoy the sun, get that vitamin D in you, right? Smile, find an adventure, choose your journey today. And I'm going to be out. I have a really important meeting I have to get to. And then I'm going to go out and I'm going to walk around a little bit. So I'll talk to you, beautiful people, later on. Have a great day.